Good day, and welcome to another Teach and Learn in Korea experience video, or my general experiences in Korea. And the previous video was a bit hectic. I literally took like about 20 minutes now just to compose myself and everything to record this video because, yes, I record these multiple videos on one day. And like I said, the previous one had the student death, the accidental student death in it. And this one's going to kind of focus on the ripple effects, so kind of focus more on my trips to and back from school. So this isn't a big thing, but in the beginning, people were very. I could feel that the Koreans were very standoffish with me, like the Koreans on the bus and everything. And mainly because I was busy growing a beard, I didn't look. It was the beginning stages of growing a beard again, and you don't look your best while your beard is growing. So eventually, when it got fuller, you know, it wasn't such an issue. I didn't see it, and I later found out that Koreans literally think that apparently you might be homeless or something if you have a beard. Now, I do get where they're coming from, especially when the beard is still growing, and or you are weird when you have a beard, because Koreans generally don't have beards, which is another story. I'll probably get to that story today. Also, just another no, that's a Korean experience. I just need to remember that. But anyway, so I'm getting on my bus every day, 5 days a week. Get on the bus, spend 45 minutes, go to Sanunsa, and then go to my school call in Shimwon, and sitting there like the first. I remember getting my first piece of food on the bus about 2 months, roughly 2 months after I got to Korea. And it was a cob of corn, milies in Afrikaans. It was a millie. And the thing is, I get very nauseous when I eat it. And coupled with motion sickness, yeah. Now, I know it was rude to not eat it. So this woman, this Ajima, come up to me, and she just like fishes in her handbag and hands me this warm corn cob thing. And I'm sitting there, and I know I'm going to be very nauseous after this. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at it, and I say kamsamnida to her, and I'm looking, and I'm holding on to it, and I'm trying not to eat it because I know, like, I already have motion sickness on the bus. Now I've got to eat something that'll make me nauseous. And she gave it to me. And after about 10 minutes on the bus ride, she's like pointing at me like, eat. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I start eating it. Man, it was the most difficult piece of corn, cob, or whatever that I had to eat. Luckily, it was only halfway. It was like cut in like in the middle. So it was this tiny piece. And I start eating it, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there, and I'm swallowing, and I'm, oh, and I'm, right? But I'm enjoying it. I'm smiling while eating it. I'm looking at her saying kamsamnida. And she at one point had to get off, and she's like, says goodbye to me, and I say goodbye to her. Probably used the wrong phrase, but I said goodbye to her and said thank you again. And she goes off and does her own thing. She works on one of the outlying farms, I guess. And we continue on to the things, onto the school. And I remember, like, after that after the student, the incident, the I started getting more and more food on the buses, right? I started getting more and more food. It was, it moved on because I think they could see on my expression that I couldn't really eat it. Like that day when I got that corn thing, when I got that millie, I went to the school. Literally, I got off the bus, went to school, went to the bathroom, threw up, brushed my teeth, and then go and ate some food, ate lunch. And but after that incident in the previous video, the food started showing up more and more, and it was 90% of the time It was gorguma, sweet potato. It was sweet potato, cooked sweet potato that I'd get, and I'll just eat it, and I'll be like, "Sweet potatoes, that's a thing I can eat." Mm. And I would be randomly walking in the streets in my hometown, and I just like, especially during wintertime, and this is where I got my first experience of hot talk, hot talk, and just this random guy in a stall runs up to me and hands me something in this like silver wrapping sort of thing, silver packet. And I open it and it is hot dog. And I'm like, oh, that's my first experience of hot dog. I'll get into a hot dog once I get done with the school stuff. And it turns out that that simple act of me pitching up had people in the town talking and had people know, they found out that I'm working at Shimwan. I'm a teacher at Shimwan Elementary School, Shimwan Chodeng Hakyo. And I just started getting a lot of random kind gestures, food wise and everything. And they sort of know, or they sort of found out that I was the teacher that doesn't mind talking to kids on the street, that from the school. If I meet my kids while walking around in Gochang on the street, I'd stop and talk to them, and they'd talk to me, and they'd be uncomfortable, and it would be awkward, not uncomfortable. It would be awkward between us because we're trying to talk, but language barrier was an issue. My broken Korean, their broken English. Their broken English was way better than my broken Korean, but they never believed that for some reason. And we would like talk and everything with the kids. If I saw that, I wouldn't go out of my way. I'd have them come up to me if they wanted to talk to me. But most of the time they'd be just like bowing, and I'd bow back and they'd go on. But some of them would come in and talk to me. I remember also in Shimwan, just down the road, and I'm going to do a Google Maps video about it eventually. Just down the road was Shimwan's big grocery store. I think it was Lotte Mart or something. I can't remember. We'll see in the Google Maps what it's called, if there's a Google Map Street View thing there. But I'd walk there, and there'd be students running around, and during lunchtime they'd be doing stuff, or they'd be and they just walk up to me and greet me. And the students had never even met me that I don't know, kids in another school in a town, and I think it's a secondary school, a high school in South African terms. They would just walk up to me and say, "Hey, Satein teacher," or "Hey, Zaffa teacher," obviously using my real name. And that was my general idea. There's one time where I was walking and I was looking around, and in Shimwan, and I'm just walking past, and I'm like, "Oh, cool, this is a police station," because I recognize the symbols and everything. I'm like, "Oh, police station." And I'm standing there, and I know, like, it was one of those days where I had classes. We had lunch at 12, or we had lunch at 1. No, we had lunch at 12, and my classes only started at like 2. So after lunch, I'd go brush my teeth, and I'd go buy some candy and stuff for the kids. We'd have a candy party or a snack party or whatever. I'd buy some snacks or candies. And I remember this one day, I was walking, and I'm like, cool, I kind of need to smoke. So I'm walking, and just before I hit the police station, I look around, I don't see any kids, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to try and duck into an alleyway, light up a cigarette, because I don't want the kids to see me smoke. Light up a cigarette and finish smoking, and then, continue on my merry way. So I'm standing there, and I'm looking around while walking, but obviously walking a lot slower. And I'm passing this police station. I'm like, okay, cool. You know what? I'm not going to stop anywhere near this police station. I'm just going to walk past it, and probably just take a side road and stand in the corner and smoke and keep a lookout for kids. So I'm walking, and I'm busy taking out. I see an alley, a street to the side, and I'm like taking out my cigarettes, and I look around, and I'm like all secretive, I'm like, okay, no kids, no kids, no kids, no kids. And I take out a cigarette, and I hear this, yeah, yeah. And I look around, and I put my cigarette back, and I look around, and there's this skinny police officer dude running up to me, and I'm like freezing. I'm like, oh crap. And he comes up to me and he talks to me in Korean, and I'm like, what? And he talks to me in Korean, and he grabs me by the arm. I'm like, oh my fuck, I'm gonna be arrested now for something I don't know I did wrong. And what happens was he takes me to the back of the police station, walled off section, and I'm like, oh God, is this where they take people to be jailed? Oh, help me, help me, help me. Am I gonna get jailed? And he takes me to the back. He takes out a packet of, he takes out his cigarettes. He looks at me, he points, and he lights up a cigarette, and I'm like, oh. And I light up a cigarette. So that was the smoking section. And he just didn't want me to smoke in public view because I was a teacher. I was the foreigner teacher, the only foreigner teacher in that area, in their small town, that they literally started looking out for me. And I believe it has something to do with the fact that with the fact of the previous video's incident. And also the town there treated me with very, with respect. They'd, if there were teacher lunches done there, or we'd just go somewhere and eat in that small town. They'd make sure that they would put me near steps, because I couldn't bend my legs because I'm not flexible like that. I couldn't sit cross-legged and eat. So they'd put me near steps. They'd always have seating for me near steps so that I can just, I'll eat and I'll just stretch out my legs to the side over the steps or to the edge of the flooring bit. And that was basically essentially the after effects of that. Lots of food on the bus. Lots of, there was food, there was goguma, corn. There was basically goguma and corn. Corn was given to me twice, I think, and the rest of the time it was just sweet potato. And I'd get ice cream on the bus, or some form of candy, some form of chocolate, just random people that I don't know. And I brought this up with my co-teacher, and she's like, oh, it's families of the students. And I remember this one day, I was I was waiting for the bus to go into Gochang, and the girls, I guess her father, the girl who passed away, her father came up to me, and he's like, no, mentions her name, and I'm like, oh no, it's okay. And he puts his hand on his chest and he says thank you, and I'm like, yeah, it's, I don't want to say Kwenchanayo, because I know, Kwenchanayo means I'm okay or it's okay. So I'm like, and I say in English, it's okay, don't, I feel your pain, I was like, I feel it. And he's like, yeah, and his eyes well up and everything, and he runs off. And I'm like, what? What the hell? And I'm like, okay, cool. He runs off. He just came and said thank you, that I was there. And after a few minutes, the bus pitches up, and he's on the bus. And he's got ice cream, and he hands me an ice cream. I think it was a Cornetto-like ice cream. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, oh, and he's like, thank you. And I'm like, oh, no, it's okay, thank you. And I eat the ice cream. And every time that I would see him, I would do the deepest of bows to him, and he would bow back, and, he'd shake my hand, and obviously we'd shake hands, and he's like, yeah. So every single time I saw him, that happened. But like I said, the food increased a lot on the bus trips to and from Shimwan. And I believe it's tied to that event. And after that, the general consensus in Gochang, which is about 45 minutes away from Shimwan, the general consensus in Gochang was that teacher is the cool teacher. That teacher, we respect that teacher. And that is sort of a follow-up on the previous video. And thank you everybody for watching. Please remember to hit that notification bell, hit like and subscribe if you want to interact with the video. If you don't want to like it, if you don't like it, hit that dislike button. Leave comments. It helps YouTube push my, if there's interaction on the video, it's always a positive. But thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.